Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to have a discussion about why it seems everyone is doing better than you. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is no matter where you look, and this is probably, I suppose I'd like to call it the social media effect. Wherever you look, people are showboating, aren't they? They're being show ponies. They're saying, look at this, look what I got, look what I spent, look at all this, and sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, particularly if you've just entered the Pokemon investing space and you can see people's amazing collections and you think, why is everyone doing better than me? Why are people's cards worth more than mine? Why are people's collections worth more than mine? And I'm going to go over some reasons for that. Now, just a real quick premise. Of course, not everyone's doing great. I've done countless videos where I sort of highlight maybe, some of the pictures people will post online, whether it's Facebook groups or the Poke Investing Reddit forum, for argument's sake. People saying, how am I going? How's my investment tracking? And, you see a bunch of I suppose products where someone's just gone down to their local Walmart or Kmart here in Australia or Costco in the US and just spent $200 and parked it on a shelf and said, how am I going? It's like, well, all you've got is a bunch of collection boxes and one Elite Trainer box and a couple of tins. And it's like, anyway, that's beside the point. What we're getting at is, though, those flexes people do where you see amazing collections, and probably realistically, YouTube's probably the space for that. Now, I'm not here showboating. I'm not saying I have the world's best collection. There's so many people that have better collections than me, and I get envious as well. I get jealous of their collections, particularly singles collections, because I would say I have a very modest singles collection because I'm more focused on sealed products. I love to collect Elite Trainer boxes because I think they display really well, and I love to collect booster boxes. And I've also got bulk booster boxes, of course, stored away, as investment opportunities for the future, which is what the whole channel's about. But let's answer that question, and why do we feel that everyone's doing better than us? And back onto that YouTube forum, that's probably where you see it the most. You see guys like PokeRev, you see guys like, Leonhardt with just what seems like millions of dollars worth of Pokemon card products. And it's like, where do they get their money? How do they spend it? And this isn't certainly a knock at anyone. It's just an example of people, you see guys like Rudy, how does he spend $3 million on Sword and Shield booster boxes? Like, where does he get that money? Like, it's just, you think, whoa, am I so far behind the eight ball? So let's look at some answers for that question, I guess, or examples or answers for that question. And there's a few reasons for it. The first one is it could actually be true. And Rudy's probably the best example of that. Like, what he has, what he's achieved, what he owns is phenomenal. Like, he is the best in the business. He has to be the ultimate sealed Pokemon card investor, doesn't he? Like, he just knows what he's doing and he has the capital to do it. Other people though, you look at their collections and you think, like, it just seems too good to be true. How do you just, as a 30-year-old or a 28-year-old or a 34-year-old or a 24-year-old, how do you have like $1.5 million to go and buy multiple collections of, 6 Skyridge booster boxes and, 4 Expedition base set boxes and 3 first edition Team Rocket boxes and a couple of EX series boxes and it's like, where do you get that money? Like, personally, I couldn't find it. It makes me jealous. I wish I could. I wish I had that amount of spare money. But let's get into maybe some more realistic answers as to, I suppose what you see. And the first one is what I want to talk about, that social media effect. The whole idea behind a lot of people's social media is, they're really wanting to highlight or look good, aren't they? Like, they're selling the candy, as we say here in Australia, is a bit of a football term. You're selling the candy. You're making yourself out to maybe be or have something that you don't have to impress people that you're probably never, ever going to meet in your life. And that's why my ethos is always just to keep it real. And look, some people might like that, others might not. But in my opinion, that's my philosophy and that's how I'm going to be, not just in the Pokemon card world or the YouTube space, but in life. Like, that's just how I am. I pretty much never post on social media. I don't really care about it. YouTube is my social media. That's where I do my, interacting, so to speak. So that's one thing. If you see all these collections, sometimes, it could be a bit of a facade, so to speak. And the second one is, a lot of people, the second reason for this is a lot of people live in the now, don't they? Okay. They spend all they have on Pokemon cards or other things to impress other people. Like, if you're living in the now, you're not putting money away to save for the future. You're buying cars or other stuff. But when we're talking more Pokemon related, there's even people that have probably gone into debt possibly. Like, And that's probably one of the other points I'll bring up in a second, but everyone's probably seen this. If you're part of the Pokemon investing Reddit forum, there was someone talking about he doesn't have the money to, fund his dog's surgery that it desperately needed because he spent all his recent money on Pokemon cards and has nothing left. So that's another reason, these collections that you see posted about, it could just be that, people are just living in the now. They're spending all they get on Pokemon cards just to make it look better. And on that, like I said, the next point, they could even be using credit to buy those products. And, some people have talked about that. I've seen it. And that's a really, really grey area to get into with what is arguably, an alternate investment, which could prove to be very successful if you do it right and you're experienced enough in it. But if you're thinking, if I can buy credit, essentially borrow money, that is, add 6% or 7% or whatever it might be, and my Pokemon card investments can return me 15% per annum, well, I'm up. So I'm happy to buy Pokemon cards on credit. It's like, whoa, that's a very, very grey area to get into. Like I always spruik the idea, and I don't like to really give people financial advice. All I do is point out how I do it. I'm not saying do this and spend your money exactly this way. What I'm saying is, I personally choose to spend 5% of my portfolio, so to speak, on Pokemon cards. I'm not a very risky person. That's how I choose to do it. Before we get into point number 5, though, hey, I'm spruiking these guys for a little while. They are the sponsors of the video. There's a new app out called Shiny. It's been out for 3 months. I've downloaded it, added my collection. You can add singles. It's so cool. You can render them in 3D, spin them around, add them to your collection. It adds up the value, of course. Not only that, and not only does it have Pokemon, of course, but it has other TCGs. And not only that, you can choose graded cards, whether it's been graded by CGC or Beckett or PSA, and then you can choose the grade of it. So it adds that straight into it. It's getting live market data from both, raw prices and graded prices. You can also add in sealed product. It's a really, really cool app. I'm really, really liking it so far. The data's only going to get better because the app's only 3 months old. It's got 3 months worth of data, but that's only going to get better. So if you haven't downloaded the app, give it a try. It's really cool. I'm really enjoying it. On to point number 5, though. Like me, you could be too, and here's another side of it. If your collection isn't good enough, maybe you are too risk adverse. And you know what? I've asked myself that countless times. Am I too risk adverse? Because we look back towards Sun and Moon era, for argument's sake. So I've always collected Pokemon cards. And if you've listened to my videos, like it's been since base set first come out. But I really only started investing in about 2020, of course. Like that's when a lot of people did. I started stashing away booster boxes and, started with Sword and Shield base and, into, Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze, etc. and Battle Styles. And what happened during that phase is I looked back at Sun and Moon and I thought they're not as cheap as Sword and Shield. You could pick up, this is Australian dollars, Cosmic Eclipse, Unbroken Bonds, Unified Minds, etc. for about 300 to 350 Australian dollars. So about what the price of something like a Lost Origin is now, for argument's sake, or a Fusion Strike now in Australia, which was about probably $220 US. Yeah, give or take, $220, $240 US. So again, about what the price of Lost Origin or Fusion Strike is now. And I went back and bought one of each, except Team Up, because Team Up was already at like 600 Australian dollars, and I thought, far out, that's expensive. If we had a crystal ball, I'd go back and buy it like that. But anyway, my point I'm trying to make is I was too risk adverse. I should have went harder into those sets. So sometimes people's impressive collections are because they are willing to take the risk, and sometimes that risk can well and truly pay off. Like if I'd bought the whole of it, at any given moment, there was probably about 20 to 40 Cosmic Eclipse booster boxes for sale on eBay in Australia. They weren't as, probably as heavily printed as Sword and Shield boxes. Now you'd probably be lucky to find 4 or 5 for sale on the Australian eBay. But back then, there was probably, like I said, 20, 40, maybe even 50. Imagine if I just bought them all. Even the most expensive one, which was probably going for 500 Australian. What if I bought 40 of them? I'd be sitting pretty damn well now, wouldn't I? Like, sometimes I just feel personally I'm too risk averse. Maybe 5% is not enough. And a lot of you guys make jokes like, 5%, I've got 60K in Sword and Shield booster boxes and not a cent in my bank account. It's like, okay, well, that's great. Makes me laugh, and you do you. You're a lot more risk tolerant than what I am. I'm very risk adverse when it comes to that, and maybe to my detriment. Maybe I should have went in a little bit harder on some of those sets. And hey, a final point I wanted to make is, when it comes to seeing other people's collections, particularly other YouTubers that you're watching, and how maybe, big and impressive their collection is and how much you want those things, just don't forget not to compare yourself to others. There's that old quote, isn't it? And how does it go? Something along the lines of, comparison is the thief of joy. And we do that all the time, don't we? And that's what I mean by that whole social media effect, if we're looping it back to the start of the video, where, people compare themselves to others so often, when in reality, you don't see what's actually going on in the background. All these fancy holidays you see posted on, someone could have been not well in the background, or, someone could have stolen their phone or their bag or their wallet, or, countless things could happen. All we see quite often online is the best of everything. So don't compare yourself to others. And what other people always do is they compare upwards. They go, oh, look at the booster boxes. If we're talking Pokemon card world, look at all the booster boxes he's got. He's got Team Rocket, Fossil, Jungle, Expedition Base, Skyridge, far out. That's, those 5 boxes are worth more than my whole Sword and Shield collection put together. And it's like, don't compare upwards. The only person, I know this sounds a bit corny, but the only person you should be comparing your collection to, or your investment portfolio to, is yourself, okay? Try and aim to get a bit better at it each day. Watch the right YouTubers, watch the right content creators, watch the right videos, read the right things, learn your own tactics and styles and what's going to work for you when it comes to generating wealth as part of your collection or investment portfolio in the Pokemon card world, and then eventually learn how to sell it. So I suppose that just about sums up the video, doesn't it? Don't stress. I suppose to summarize the whole thing, don't stress if you think everyone's doing better than you, and really you should only be comparing your collection to your own. I'm Michael, this is PokeOz, and I'll catch everyone next time.